Welcome to Stuck in a Catch Fence. My name is Ryan Peters. I appreciate you joining us for another episode here. Today, we're going to talk about how to make a Fanduel lineup and some tips and tricks on what it takes to do that, hopefully to become successful at doing that. I'm joined by Joe Spillman again for today's episode. And Joe, you're going to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, just some straight line betting. I'm going to give you my five best picks, or what I think are the five best picks for this race to win a little money based off a $10 bet. So that should be fun as well.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and get straight to it. I've already got some of our screen popped up here. I'll share that so you guys can see it as well. And this is exactly what a FanDuel lobby looks like. First thing you're going to do is go to lobby, click on NASCAR, and boom, you see 40,000 different things, okay? And we're going to talk about what it takes to build a tournament. And if you're like me and have currently $2 in your account because the Bengals decided that they weren't going to show up and drain your account, and you're like, well, I'm just going to roll with this for a little bit. Let's go ahead and click on this 5-cent entry. And the first thing you want to know is how do you score? Well, and here's the prizes to go with it. So on 5-cent entry, you're not talking about retiring anytime soon if you win this lineup, which would be very hard. But let's go ahead and look at the rules and scoring. And the big thing here to me is laps led. That is going to be something, at least talking about the Busch Clash, that, we're not going to know a lot of, because there's going to be heat races involved. There's going to be last chance qualifiers. All these things are going to be completely different, and it's going to make it a little bit different for setting your lineup traditionally versus the Busch Clash. So my main thing is, a lot of times I like to choose people in the top 3 or 4 whenever I go to set my lineup, because they have a chance to lead a lot of laps. And it really depends on the track too. You get the front runner at, say, Talladega or Daytona coming up here soon, and the guy that gets to the pole, he may end up leading the first 20 or 30 laps, and those are just points that are going to go right to you. And then it breaks it down by position. Okay, so you can pretty much figure this all out. If you're last place, you get 1 point, and if you're in first place, you get 43 points. And it kind of varies. It goes by 1 point per difference starting from third, so you get extra bonus for second and first. But the number one thing to at least pay attention to is, did somebody qualify well? Because you get half a point for the difference from where they began to where they end. And that's where I usually make the most of my lineups. A lot of people want to get, well, I want the guy that finishes first, second, or third. You can do that. But if you get a guy that finishes, starts in 30th and finishes in the top 10, you just got yourself 10 extra points from doing that. And you'll end up making more points that way more often than not than laps led on certain tracks. So that's kind of the scoring system that, you need to be aware of, because they don't really teach you all that very well. A lot of people just jump in and try to get the top 5, and that's very, very hard.
Can I
The
ask a
best I've
question?
ever. Go ahead.
Yeah. So let me ask you this theoretically. So is it where where a driver would score as far as their qualifying? So let's say a driver finished in the second position or even on the pole, but they had to make engine adjustments and they start the race 36. Is it where they qualified or where they start the race?
It's where they qualify. FanDuel does not care where they start. If they have unapproved adjustments, if they, like Joe, say they go in practice and they have to use a backup car and they still qualified well, they don't. FanDuel does not care about where they start. It's where they qualify. So that's a great question, because a lot of people go, oh, I saw this guy qualified second, but he's going to start in 43rd. And no, he's going to start in 43rd, but he gets second qualifying.
You'd almost be able to rig the odds that way, hoping that a guy that qualified first had to make a couple adjustments and start, at the back of the pack. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, like last year when I was at Talladega, I believe it was Tyler Reddick bumped his nose against the pit wall, hit a lady's leg, and he went from a top 5 qualifying position to 40th because they had to do adjustments to the nose.
Right.
So no, you get the 5th qualifying, but you lose all the ability to gain points from the spot. So yes, that's a great question. So now we're going to enter a new lineup and see what that looks like whenever we go to enter our lineup. First thing you want to do, obviously, is pay attention to salary. Okay. So on the bottom here, it will tell you where a driver's starting position will be. And the first person I'm going to choose is because he was the fastest in qualifying, and I know he's going to be the cheapest, and I'm going to look for Justin Haley. And again, you guys can do your lineup any way you want. but you got to find a way to save some money. Boom, there he is, Justin Haley, $5,500 compared to the $13,000 we just saw from Kyle Larson. And you can say, well, Justin Haley, he's not a great driver. He's not a consistent driver. Yes, but you also want to use information to your knowledge as well. Justin Haley ran really good at this track last year. And for whatever reason, Kyle Larson decided he didn't want him to run very good at this track last year and put him in the wall. So Justin Haley is a guy that, he's going to save you some money. He's going to start on one of the 4 heat poles and has a chance to lead some laps as long as he does well in that final heat. And another preference is know your track. Okay. We're racing on a 1/4-mile track that's not that wide. There's only one groove, and that's to hug the bottom. They put some rumble strips down on the bottom paint as well, so drivers can't get to the pit wall because it'll disrupt the car a little bit. So know your track. There's not going to be a lot of passing today. So do what you can to justify your odds on making this thing better. So now that we just saved almost $8,000 compared to the top guys, who else qualified up top? Kyle Busch, Christopher Bell, and William Byron. Okay, so let me go ahead and see what it looks like if I throw one of these drivers in. Well, considering I got an old school Kyle Busch shirt on, I think it's pretty easy. I'm going to choose him. And Kyle Busch last year ran this track really well on top of it as well. So that's another guy I'm going to choose. Another thing that I like to take account of, and Joe, you'll know this as well, when it comes to short tracks, short, low bank tracks, you got to look at a driver's profile and what they do well with. How many drivers do you think in this field have run close to a 1/4-mile track?
Well, you would, yeah, and if they do, you got to look at the guys who run a lot of dirt track, like a Kyle Larson. But even then, the racing dynamics are a little bit different because you're on pavement. You don't have the banking there, but a lot of those 1/4-mile or 3/8 of a mile short tracks are pretty low banked as well. But if I'm going to look at people, and I'll get into that when I talk about my straight line bets, that you want to look at drivers that have a lot of experience on short tracks.
And that goes ahead with Kyle Busch, because Kyle Busch has been driving a lot with his son, who's been racing on small wings and things of that nature. So every time Brexton goes out to race, nobody's probably been racing more in dirt, at least in the last year, than Kyle Busch. So that's another reason why I would choose that. Another person, and I will just kind of in my mind mark him, will be Christopher Bell. I mean, Christopher Bell grew up racing on dirt. He loves racing on dirt. So that's a guy that, in my mind, I'm going to check as well. I'm not going to click on him right now because he's 12,000. Let's go ahead and look at some middling guys. Tyler Reddick's not one I'm going to click on. I would have. He was fast in practice and was running really well, and then his car caught on fire. So that's another thing NASCAR evidently did not fix between last year and this year, is the fact that there were flames inside Tyler Reddick's car. I don't know what Tyler Reddick's car looks like right now. Is he going to go to a backup car? Is he completely out of it? Did they only bring one car? I mean, I'm not really sure right now. Don't have a lot of news. Not even Fanduel has any news. Otherwise, this box would be orange right there. And you always use those to your reference. You go to make a lineup. Last thing you want to do is secure your lineup and find out this guy ended up having to put in he put duct tape on his car, and NASCAR didn't like it whenever they went through, inspection, and he ended up finding out he's in last place. So I'm going to keep going down, looking. Not really anybody that catches my eye. The Toyotas were not very fast in qualifying. Some were in practice. Okay. Here's that right here, Austin Dillon. And qualifying, he qualified 6th. Okay. If I truly believe that Kyle Busch is going to help this driver out, where would be the first thing that I could find that out? Setups. Kyle Busch probably got his setup right, ended up qualifying 2nd. Driver like Austin Dillon, who normally doesn't qualify that well in this type of event, ends up qualifying 6th. Let's go ahead and throw him on there for 7,000. Might as well. Again, these are hypothetical lineups. We're just going to look at what we got. So now we got 25,000 remaining. We can pretty much get whatever we want. So I'm going to go back to where I was earlier. I'm going to get Christopher Bell because I thought he ran really, really good. I got 13,000 left, so I can get anybody, but I can get anybody. And I'm going to go with last year's winner. And that's the way my lineup's going to look. Now, earlier you said, Ryan, what do you do about qualifying spots in terms of setting your lineup based on where they qualified. These guys only qualified for heats. So this race is so much more unique than what it would be usually, because the way that they run in their heats is going to determine where they play or where they race, in the actual main event. So we'll do another lineup so I can kind of show you that in the future. Definitely when it comes to Daytona, we'll talk about that. And those are lineups where you can fill out the entire back half of your roster with guys that didn't qualify well. Because, Joe, in super speedway racing, a guy in 30th can come up into the top 10 in a matter of 3 or 4 laps.
Right. Yeah. And so when you're talking about this short quarter mile track as well, we haven't seen the heat qualifying races yet either. So that's going to jockey positioning, but you're absolutely right. What we saw last year is you put these cars on a quarter mile track and it makes it very hard to pass. So, if you're going to start near the back in this race, unless you find a way to advance your position, most likely you're going to end near the back of the pack. So, just based on what I saw from last year's race.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and I filled out that lineup. That's the lineup we're going to choose for right now. Obviously, check whenever you go to do your line right before the race starts. If you can manage yourself to not poke your eyes out and watch Fox pre-race or NBC pre-race and things of that nature, make sure you catch all the information that you can to make sure none of these things happen. Because there are times, Joe, where, between Saturday and Sunday, something funky goes on and you end up finding your guy ends up moving to the back of the pack. And at certain races, that's a death wish. When it comes to like this year's road course races, they're not going to have stage cautions this year now. So you may say, well, they'll switch up strategy and they may end up doing well. Not if everybody's on the same pit cycle, and it's going to be hard to pass. So, know your racetrack, number one, and we'll help you with that. That's something that we, as part of talking NASCAR, we also want to try to make you some money on NASCAR. And that's going to be something that we enjoy and we can all do together. I locked in our lineup. It should be ready to go. We'll see how it does. Again, without any type of heat racing, we're just purely going off of practice and lap speed. Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can show them how to make either some really big money or lose some big money. Copy or, let's just go say this. Don't bet what you don't have.
Okay? Right. No. Yeah.
First and foremost.
And so Ryan, you and I both are people who like to put a little bit of money down on sporting events. But I encourage anybody, if you're going to gamble money, don't gamble money that you need, and don't gamble money with the idea that I'm going to make money to pay bills. If you're going to put money down,
yes,
it's money that, it's like drinking money. The money you go to the bar with, you're never going to have again. And you need to look at your gambling money the same way. Gambling's supposed to be fun. It's not something that, I would encourage many people to try to make their living on. And there's a reason for that. So, there wouldn't be there wouldn't be an industry of sports betting if people like you and I won all the time, Ryan. So it wouldn't make financial sense. So
not everybody walks out of the casino with a big old smile and a briefcase, and there's a reason why the casino wins every time.
So having said that, though, I'm going to go ahead and pull up on DraftKings. I like to put my straight line bets. I do like to put them on DraftKings, and right now, hashtag not a sponsor. I'm just showing you where I like to place my bets. So one thing I will say about the Clash is there's a lot of variables that you don't get with a normal race. Like we haven't had heat racing yet, which is going to directly impact starting positions for the feature race. So this is more like, or it is short track racing. And you go to a dirt race, you wouldn't put money on somebody running a qualifying race until they get to the feature. But having said that, and since we're doing this on Sunday, I have 5 bets picked out here, which I think that if I'm going to put, and these are all based on $10 bets, if I'm willing to put up $50 and $10 on each of these drivers to win, I just want to show you what that means. So obviously the first driver here I have picked out, highlighted here, is Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch is only plus 800 to win, which means if you put $10 on him to win this race at plus 800, you're going to get $80 to win that race plus your $10 back. You're going to get $90 back if he wins the race. Now, one thing that I always like to point out about auto racing, and if you look at football and you see, you'll see the point spread, somebody's +3, -3. -3 is obviously the favorite, which means that they're giving up 3 points. +3 means they're getting 3 points. So if you bet the spread on that on either team, say, the Bengals are playing the Baltimore Ravens and the Bengals are +4.5 or -4.5. That means the Bengals are favored by 4.5 points. So if you bet on the Bengals, that means you give up 4.5 points. So if Baltimore if the Bengals end up only winning by 3, you actually lose that bet because Baltimore beat the spread. Now, when you're talking about football betting or baseball betting, whatever, you look at those and there is a line on what you're going to get paid out. Auto racing, you have plus or minus odds, and the only place that you'll ever find minus odds in auto racing is Formula One. And that's because if you start 1, 2, or 3 in Formula One, you're probably going to win the race. But right now, Kyle Busch, who I think should actually be the favorite, obviously Christopher Bell's the favorite, and that's based off qualifying. Kyle Busch finished second. He looked really good in practice. He looked really great in qualifying. He's at +800. I think Kyle Busch is probably going to run a great heat race. He's probably going to be in the top 5 starting position, and he's going to be set up to win, all day unless he has problems during the race, somebody bumps him, whatever. And that's why odds are so high in auto racing, because there's so many variables. But like I said, the first driver I'm going to pick and put $10 down on is Kyle Busch at +800. If he happens to win the race, I'm gonna make that. I'm gonna make $40 or $30 off that race. I'm sorry. The next driver I have picked is obviously Kyle Larson. Now, Kyle Larson, he had an okay day yesterday, but the reason why I'm picking him, and I'm going to pick Kyle Larson either way, whether or not he had,
because you always pick Kyle Larson.
Yeah, because I do a lot, but there's actually a reason for it. Is because Kyle Larson is one of the best short track racers, if not the best in the country. He's great on dirt. He's great on any short track.
And he's good in any car, Joe. I mean, that's just all there is to it.
He's good in any car on wheels. And my God, how your attitude has changed towards Chevrolet drivers since Kyle Busch made the switch. But no, Kyle Larson knows how to Kyle Busch knows how to pass on short tracks, and he knows how to work the track, which a lot of these drivers that don't have a lot of short track experience do not. So Kyle Larson's at +900, $10 bet on him is going to pay you out $100. You're going to make 90 and your $10 back. Now, here's one that I think is an absolute steal if you're talking about $10 bets, and that's Joey Logano. Joey Logano won this race last year. He obviously knows how to run on this track. He didn't look bad yesterday. I don't think he qualified that well. No, I think
he's about middle of the pack.
Yeah, about 14th or so.
Yeah.
So, I don't think he qualified well, but you kind of got to separate qualifying from what a driver can do. I think Joey Logano knows how to work this short track. He obviously won last year. And, at +1200, Joey Logano is going to pay you out $130 on a $10 bet.
And to go with that, Joe, we only have one driver that we can look to at victory lane at this track, and that's Joey Logano.
Exactly.
And you're getting the odds of that. He's almost outside the top 10.
Right. And you're going to be very happy, even if you're picking 5 drivers, you're risking $50. If you get one of these last 3 picks to hit, like with the Joey Logano at +1200, that's going to be a winning day for you. That's going to be great. So Joey Logano, I think, is an absolute steal at +1200. I mean, I can't believe his odds are actually that high, but hey, thank you, DraftKings. My next driver, and this is simply because of Martin Truex driving history. It's going to be Martin Truex Jr. I actually don't think Martin Truex is going to fare very well today. And this is kind of a long shot for me, but I think at +1500 and Martin Truex Jr.'s driving experience and his ability to win races in any condition, I think he's worth the $10 risk at +1500. So that's going to pay you out $160 if he ends up winning on a $10 bet. Going to be a great day. I know he can win at this track. Martin Truex Jr. can win at any track he goes to, depending on the day that he has. And for him to be down, with Justin Haley and Chase Briscoe and Bubba Wallace, I think that's kind of a steal. Of course, Kevin Harvick's down there as well, which wouldn't actually be a bad bet, but I didn't take him. I'm actually, and just to caveat this, Ryan and I did not talk about this before we got on,
No,
but
that's why I'm laughing.
so Austin Dillon is at plus 5,000. Austin Dillon qualified 6th yesterday. Obviously the same setup as Kyle Busch. And I do think Kyle Busch is going to help this team out tremendously. I think Austin Dillon qualifying 6th, if he has a good heat race, he's probably going to have a good day, and he's probably going to run with Kyle Busch all day. And on a short track, if you got 2 teammates up front, you're going to do well. And at plus 5,000, absolute steal. Plus 5,000 odds on this race. If Austin Dillon was to win, pays out $510. So you get, it pays you $500. You get your $10 bet back. I think for odds of somebody that qualified 6th, for the heat races, depending if he has a great heat racing day, I think that you can't go wrong putting $10 on there. And obviously, if he happens to win and you only put $10 down, you're walking out with $500 minus your 50. You have a plus 450 day. You're going to be happy all day. You're probably going to be buying some drinks at the bar. So,
you ain't kidding.
So, those are my top 5. And like I said, I do want to caveat everything. This is just based on what I'm looking at, what we saw in qualifying, because at the end of the day, these odds are going to change dramatically if we wait after the heat races and see where people are going to start the feature at. These odds are going to change dramatically. And having said that, if you're not experienced with placing bets on auto racing or any other bets, if you lock in these bets now, they're locked in at those odds. They're not going to change on you. So if you wait until after qualifying, the odds change, those are locked in. You're going to get the odds that DraftKings or Fanduel or whatever betting site that you're using has put out at that time. So I think in a race like this, which is kind of and I said this earlier in the last show, that it's kind of a gimmick race, I would put the bets in now because you're going to get the best odds. Ryan?
No, I agree. And that's kind of, you're playing with the unknown, and, if when you put it in now, there's a possibility that Austin Dillon ends up, in the top 3 to begin one of these heat races off, and you got 5,000 odds, and that may go to 500, and you just lost, $100 off of your bet. But at the same time, Austin Dillon could wreck on the first lap and not make it to the main event. But you're betting on those differences, and you might as well do it with the high odds, to me, at least, versus the favorite if you're going to bet, those type of things. The only thing that I would add on top of that, and that's just for this race, is I thought AJ Allmendinger, he's hungry. He has the same setup, too, as Justin Haley, and they both looked fast. And he showed in practice he's not afraid to use the chrome horn. And if you're new to NASCAR, that means just shoving somebody out of the way. And I promise you this, Joe, 150 laps with 27 cars on the track at the same time, there's going to be a lot of usage of the chrome horn if you're really wanting to. And AJ Allmendinger in practice has been willing to show that. So at 5,000 odds with him, that might be something that you throw a couple bucks at, and, it might end up turning up as gold as well.
Yeah, good show. And let's see when we come back at you how well we did. Like I said, with high odds, auto racing is something that, a lot of people make a living at betting on football or baseball or even basketball. And you could kind of play the odds in that, just like cards, just like playing Texas Hold'em or blackjack. You could play the odds in that and be pretty successful. Auto racing, there's so many variables that it is really a fun way to bet, and you can win big without spending a crap ton of money. So if you are going to place a bet, good luck to you today. I hope you win money.
That's right. Well, this will wrap it up for Stuck in the Catch Fence. We hope you learned something today. We'll be back like always. Have fun and enjoy the race.